Sure can. Okay, pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Hubbardston Select Board will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with the right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town website. No in-person attendance. Members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via Zoom. In the event that we're unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the town's website a comprehensive record of the proceedings after the meeting.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. We will, as usual, start with open session. I know we've got some attendees as well here. One of them being our future acting town administrator, David Dixon. Typically, what we do here, open meeting, there aren't a lot of hands up typically, and some people still sort of show up late and don't quite know how to do it or which link. So we usually state that you know, if people need to come in, it's more for the people who are present now. But if people come in at some point and want to get on an open meeting and missed it for whatever reason, they can, we'll allow them to sort of make themselves known and fit them in when it makes sense, so that they're not waiting a couple hours to because of technology. So anyway, in saying that, is anybody here that you know of, Ryan, for open meeting?
Not that I've been told beforehand, but I do see a couple names. So if anybody is here, please indicate and we will figure that out.
You can't figure it out. When you do figure it out, just let us know. Don't hold off. But we are going to move on. So the first items beyond open session are some correspondence. We've got one of our recipients of the Country Hen Scholarship last year, Ryan, who sent us a letter.
Yeah, so it's in your packet. So I don't want to slaughter the name, but Nikita Guinan, hopefully I said that correctly, sent some correspondence to the board, thanking them for the generosity of the Country Hen Scholarship. That's a scholarship administered by the town and Country Hen, which is one of our largest businesses. She was a recipient of the scholarship and sent the board a nice letter about her college this year and how much she appreciated.
Ryan, can you call it up? I want to read it.
Sure.
It's brief. I mean, I've read it. Yeah, I want to read it out loud. Okay, I don't have to go through all the upfront pleasantries there, but I wanted to let you know how much my family and I appreciate the generosity of the Country Hen, as well as the time and effort that Country Hen and the Board of Selectmen put into organizing the scholarship. I finished my first semester at Boyce College, which I really enjoyed despite the various COVID-19 restrictions on campus. I was still able to go in-person classes, meet new people, and participate in fun activities. Most importantly, I learned a great deal through my classes, both in the classroom and through the challenge of learning how to study and balance my time. My favorite class was my Introduction to Business class, and I'm majoring in business. My first semester was filled with wonderful new experiences and some challenges that caused me to grow and learn, and I am so grateful for that opportunity. I'm completing a break right now at home with my family, planning and looking forward to going back on campus soon. I'm excited to be taking new classes and meeting new people. I also recognize that there will probably be new challenges that I will face throughout the coming semester, but hope they will cause me to grow and learn. Thank you once again. Sincerely, Nikita. So it's fabulous, right? This is why we do this, and we don't just do it and sort of move on to the next thing. It's helping people and helping people grow, and young people, and to see some of that appreciation, I think says a lot about her. I think a lot of it was said the night that she accepted it as well. Spoke very well, and hopefully she has a bright future. So anyway, so thanks for that, Ryan. And the next piece of correspondence is we have the U.S. Census 2021 Government Unit Survey. You wanted to mention this?
Yeah, Aaron, are you on here to talk about this one? So Aaron has done a good job reorganizing our agenda to include correspondence that comes to the board. I think it's a good idea. Not sure if she's here with us yet. All right, I'll try and communicate with her, and we'll come back to that one if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman.
Sounds good.
I have it, sorry.
Okay.
So yes, what this is actually, we have a couple different things here. The first one, which it looks like it wasn't labeled properly, is that we have two correspondence. The first one being about the unit survey, which it's just something that if the town would like to participate in, it's just acknowledging that this is what the US Census is doing. Some towns do participate, some towns do not. It's purely your preference and whatever the board would like. It's just to participate, similar to the, similar to acknowledging like your boundary borders. This is just acknowledging unit surveys.
So I don't feel like I've ever seen this before. Is it new? Do you know?
It is something new that they're putting out. I think it's just more that they're trying to streamline everything, put everything online like everyone else is doing right now. So it's just to give more additional access, more transparency to what it is that the government is doing with the unit survey. Again, it's just some towns participate, some towns don't. So it's whatever the board's pleasure is.
Okay, I don't really understand it yet. So I think if
Okay.
you don't mind, if we can just sort of just push it off
Yep.
until we get a little bit more time. But thank you for explaining what it is now that we sort of understand basically what it is. But still, I think there's just to make sure that we're not just saying yay or nay to something we don't fully understand. Okay.
Yep.
Was there another part to that too you were saying?
It looks like we also have, it looks like it was mislabeled. Give me just a moment to pull it up. We have, I also have a notice that this is from the DCR, which I believe this was just mislabeled under the actual information. It should not have been under correspondence. It should have been under announcements. So if you'd like, we can do it when we get to announcements, or would you prefer to do this now?
No, hold up.
It is, okay, thank you.
It'll be like 2 minutes, but still, it's easier to just go in order. So thank you. Okay, so that's it for correspondence, I think, right, for now? Okay, so we'll move on to announcements. More than anything, I just wanted to get to frozen assets. Sorry, it's you know, myopic view of my life. So where are we at? We get daily updates, Katie. I thought it was maybe going to fall the way you were, updating it, but we're getting a deep freeze tonight.
Yeah, I don't think it's falling right now. There's puddling going on. There's a lot of melting, but there's not enough puddling around the base of it to even worry about it falling tonight. So tomorrow it's going to freeze solid again. So we'll keep a daily update. I'll drive by at least once a day, if not twice, especially once we start getting a lot of melting around the base, because that's when it's going to go. But yeah, right now it's still standing tall. So that's where we're at with frozen assets, just a daily watch and a post about it. We do have dates, and I am accepting applications for the Hubbardston Fair, which will be on June 12th this year. We're bumping it up a little bit with a rain date the 13th from 9 to 2. And then we're also taking applications for Field Day. I'm working with the Lions again this year. So September 18th, 9 to 3 will be Field Day with a rain date of the 19th. I also have Dinghy Dash scheduled, which I want to say it's the last Saturday of August, which I think is the 28th, I think is the date, at 10 a.m. So, but yeah, so start building boats, start thinking about all that, start thinking about Hubbardston Fair, all the good summertime stuff is we're on a roll. So we're going to have fun this year.
Yeah, no, I'm thrilled you're doing it too. Like, so early as well. I feel like we're probably going to get a fair amount of interest because people are just itching, right?
Well, even last year we had a fair amount of interest. Right. We have something in Hubbardston that a lot of places don't have. We have space. We have these huge rec fields that we can have a large event and everyone can spread out, and we can still have plenty of room between booths, between people. Everyone can like take a spot and just chill and whatever, but there's plenty of space, and that's what we have that other towns don't. So that's why you see other towns already canceling this year. And I think they're a little early to cancel, but even still, we managed to do it last year because we have the space. So I feel very confident that this year will be much better and much easier with the way things are tracking right now with COVID. We'll be able to have a very nice event. So,
and specifically the trends towards what sort of requirements are for size gatherings, because that's a pretty important factor.
Yeah, we should be fine. I don't see any major problems.
Sounds good. All right, thank you. Moving on, we now, sorry, Aaron, we have the DCR notice that came. This is an acquisition for some land. We've seen these before, just so you know.
Okay, yes, it is. It looks like they have a large parcel. Let me just pull it up here. They have a large parcel that they are going to, there we go, that they just wanted the board to publicly announce that this is what is going to be going up for sale. And let me just get it a little bit larger here. And so that's what they just wanted to know, that they just wanted to have this as a public announcement at tonight's meeting, that this is a large piece of property. It is 249.61 plus or minus acres. And it's going to be an acquisition. Part of it is in Hubbardston, as well as a very small part, just 2 acres in Princeton. And it is currently undeveloped woodland. So that's what it is, that they just wanted the select board to actually formally announce that this is going to be going on, just so it's out here at the meeting.
So, yeah, so we've gotten a lot of these over the years. A lot of our town is owned by the DCR specifically for watershed protection in areas typically that are never going to be developed. It drove some previous select board members crazy because it felt like they were stealing from us. I don't think it's that, but, we've gotten some clarification and statistics on the taxes that we receive from this, Ryan, right? I'm not asking you to quote them, but we have received some information on that over the last few years that provided some clarity.
Yeah, in fact, today, Open Space sent some analysis. It's, I'm not sure they're quite ready to make it public yet, but the analysis of how much we get per protected or open space land versus commercial versus residential and the cost of the town. So it's their analysis. It comes from an open space lens, but this land is compensated through DCR pilots and other state agencies that are interested in protecting the watershed land. So we get revenues that will be reported tonight in the budget that help pay for town services for them taking these lands. So there is a compensation for it. And like you stated, there's not a lot to develop in this area. So even if you wanted to develop it, I'm not sure that it would be eligible. So this is some revenue that exists where it might not.
Okay, well, thanks. I don't know if anyone has any questions on this, but okay. So I see Chris is an attendee. You might want to promote him to a panelist.
I will. Can't keep the boss waiting.
And after you do that, we are on to item 4, which is presentations and the town administrator fiscal year 22 budget presentation, which is right on time.
Just real quick, I do have to see. So with this DCR notice, the board is required, and we'll do this for you, to certify that this public announcement was made, and then the state has to give a 120-day notice period. So the board could elect, if they wanted to waive the 100-day notice period or to keep that 120-day notice period. Either way, as we've seen in the past, this is likely to be acquired. So it's up to the board whether or not they want to facilitate the state's request to waive that 120-day requirement.
We typically waive it, just let people know. Okay, well, so what sort of, I know we've done it before, it's been a little while now. So basically you need a motion for us to certify that what we've received it and that we waive the 120-day time period.
If you wanted to vote to waive it, this would be the motion here that would need to be passed tonight.
Okay.
Or at your next meeting, anytime in the 120 days.
I'll make the motion to hereby agree to waive the 120-day notice period as required by the section as to the parcel of land approximately 247.585 plus or minus acres in the town of Hubbardston.
I'll second that.
Okay, so during discussion here, I just noticed that it looks like Jeremy is a panelist and I don't see Chris as me.
That was just a clicky error. Fixed it.
Oop.
Nope, didn't. Oh, Zoom. Here we go.
All right.
Hi, Chris.
Evening.
All right, so we are in discussion here, Chris. I don't know if you heard the motion and the second. We're in discussion. Do you have anything that you want to discuss?
I do not.
We are going to go to a votes, roll call. Dan, yes. Jeff,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes,
and Chris.
Yes.
Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. Sounds good. All right, so Ryan, moving on to the presentation. Is that all right?
Yes. Okay, so as required by charter, I am presenting the town administrator's operating and capital budget to you. The way this process works for those watching, I know the board knows this, the budget is organized and presented by me and then passed on to the finance committee where they review and offer recommendations. Typically, we do that hand in hand with the board of selectmen, so everyone's, or select board, sorry, so everyone's on the same page. And then the final budget is approved and brought to town meeting by the select board. So this is the first major step in the FY22 budget process. So I will bring you through the document. I won't be stopping everything, just major highlights here as part of the presentation. So this document introduces folks to the budget process here in Hubbardston so they understand it, offers a quick community profile, offers the budget planning calendar. So right now we are here in the TA budget presentation, and then tonight we'll open the annual town meeting. And then in May, throughout April, the finance committee and board of selectmen will work with the budget and make any adjustments that need to be made, with the final vote coming in May for town meeting and town election in June. So budget goals, these have been solidified in the last couple of years to address the structural deficit in the operating budget. So this means when you project out expenses versus revenues over the next 5 years, we show significant budget deficits that need to be addressed either by increasing revenue, decreasing expenses, or controlling for growth. And this budget will attempt to do all of those for you, for your goals. Also, the select board and finance committee discussed continuing to prioritize employee wages for retention purposes, and then adherence to our financial management goals, which includes proper saving, long-term savings, which we saw in this last year in the COVID pandemic year, how important savings can be in case things do go in the wrong direction in terms of budgeting, which they certainly did. It was not as dire as we predicted in the beginning, but it certainly could have been. Which is why those policies are important and those practices are important. So an important part of any budget really is how you organize your people. So this organizational chart shows people how the town is structured, the corporation is structured. And then this chart here shows the organizational structure of the town based off the charter and existing mass general laws. How we govern in the town, that matters, that form matters for the functions of government and how you pay for service delivery. So then a lot of this is covered in the budget, but I wrote a budget message for the board as required by the charter that highlights some key things in this budget. One of them is my budget meets your goals, which is my job to make sure I craft a budget that meets all of the goals that you laid out for the town and for me. It increases public safety and public works services, not a ton. We did control growth in those areas, but we were able to add some shifts in police and fire and the ability for public safety to assist other departments with fuel and other maintenance services. And we invested, as I said, in our town employees. And interestingly, this year we were able to remove free cash from the town's operating budget, which is a big, big win for the town if the budget can hold. What that means for those watching, we use one-time revenues and have for many, many years to supplement the operating budget. This is not a best practice, but many towns do it in order to increase or maintain their service levels. By taking free cash out of the budget, it takes away what we call a non-best practice and allows for greater financial stability. And I'll get into some of these other things. On the expenditure highlight side, do continue to prioritize education in this budget. This budget dedicates 70% of new revenue to the Quabbin Regional School District, which is more than that assessment takes up for the entire budget. Knowing that schools are going to need funding this year because of learning loss and other COVID impacts. Schools are receiving support from the state and hopefully soon the federal government. So we'll see how that plays out in terms of the assessment discussions. But we too need to make sure that we're contributing for a large segment of our population. We're able to save quite a bit of money due to dropped enrollment at Monty Tech. It's the second year we've had a significant drop in enrollment, which has reduced our assessment in the last 2 years by $140,000. And then we just received 2 very large assessment increases, one from Worcester Regional Retirement System, which is the largest increase we've had in nearly a decade, almost $50,000. And then Rutland Regional Emergency, our dispatch, continues to increase their assessment. They had a 9% employee wage growth and a 17% increase in our assessment in their initial budget.
Your buddies.
And they like to spend. And then just to put that in context, I'm talking about investing our employees here in Hubbardston and fighting for 2 to 3% increases for our employees. To increase wages by 9% it's not even in the same ballpark. So I'm using the word investment. I would say, I don't know what word they would use. So also on the expenditure side, we have already locked up and finalized all of our contracts for myself, the police chief, the police and the DPW unions. So we have labor peace with one union scheduled to negotiate in FY23. We feel like we bargained strongly and in good faith and have excellent relations with our unions here in town. Capital plan I'll get to in its own section. So overall, my proposal is an increase of the total budget by 2.54% to a total of $6,636,628. This also includes $198,000 for capital and $25,000.
Excuse me, Ryan. You said 6 million. It says 9.
9.6 million, sorry. So at 2.54% overall in expenditure increases. I have to present a balanced budget to you. So revenues are the same with a 1.5% increase, a $628 million revenue projection. And that's broken down as follows. You'll see the property taxes make up the largest majority of our budget. We have a significant amount of new growth, which you'll hear throughout this budget tonight. That is mostly funded by the coming online of the Williamsville Road Solar Project, which we've been talking about for a couple of years. That's a $68,000 a year pilot. We also have a large amount of new builds. We had none last year, so having 5 to 6 projects with another 5 to 6 coming is showing that there is building going on in town in growth that we can continue to see, whereas last year we had almost none. Local receipts, I'll break this down a little further for you, but we're projecting a little over a 1% increase in our local receipts. If you remember last year, we cut local receipts back. So we've been projecting a small increase in local receipts is good. And then state aid, last year, the public libraries number wasn't included in our final estimate. So it looks like our state aid went up, but it is relatively flat, about 0.5% increase in state aid. The unrestricted aid stayed exactly the same. So we're not seeing a lot of new revenue is the takeaway for state aid. Then you have to take money out for the overlay, which gives the revenue total stated before. Okay, overlay, for those who don't know, is the ability for people to abate their taxes, whether they are qualifying or asking for a reduction. We have to set aside money by law in order to cover that. Here's a pie chart of our revenues.
Is senior tax work off in that too? That's
comes out of the overlay, yes. It's a type of abatement.
Okay.
Okay, so you see, I told you, a massive gain in new growth. Still does not make up the largest chunk of our revenue. And more details in this budget proposal for people to read are included in these breakdowns of the different revenue categories. So I'll stop there briefly and see if anyone has any questions about the revenue side. I know I can talk fast, so I just want to give a second, see if there's any questions about revenue. All right, driving
Yeah,
on.
sorry, just one. So we've got the 68,000 a year for the solar project that's coming on. You said, can you just, that's going to be for an additional, or for the 20 years?
20 years, yes.
Okay, that was it.
Yeah, those projects that the board worked on to finalize a pilot agreement with, we've locked in 20 years of that growth so it can be rolled into the property tax base. A lot of people have questions about that. That goes in as new growth and then becomes part of the property tax base moving forward. Okay, so this, moving on to the expenditure side of the budget. So this pie chart shows the, by far the largest, and this is true of any town in Massachusetts, is school expenditure makes up the largest part of our expense side of the budget, followed by public safety, which is police, fire, dispatch, emergency management, and then public works is, the next biggest chunk is general government, then followed by public works. And then indirect costs, which are retirement services, insurance, and then debt, which makes up the smallest part of our budget.
Ryan, could I ask a question in terms of the expenses here? How confident do you feel on the school number that you have there?
I feel as confident as I do every year. And I'll get to the school assessment. I have a separate section to discuss with you on that. Their first budget is typically what they call their, if they could get everything they need budget. What I'm presenting to you tonight is what the town can afford, and then strategies to bridge that gap if necessary.
Okay, thank you.
So overall, we were able to quote unquote afford increases this year, minor increases based off of the new revenues that we found and savings like the Monty Tech, which was offset heavily by increases in assessment from regional dispatch and the Worcester Regional Retirement System. And then you'll see from Quabbin. Okay, the largest, sorry, I just can't help it. The largest increases in the budget are listed here. Okay, so 70% of new revenues is headed towards the QRSD. Worcester Retirement is a 20% of new revenues would go towards funding their assessment of almost 51,000. Union raises check in next. Union raises meaning monies dedicated to those that increased by steps or new contracts makes up 17% of new revenue. Non-union raises makes up 15% or a little less than 15% of new revenue. And then a small investment in informational technology, basically due to our new document storage system. So you can see these are lean increases in the budget. So a 2.54% increase essentially equates to education, mandatory assessment, and employee raises with minor increases in services across the board.
So can you explain that again? Sorry, could you just go back to that real quick? So those aren't supposed to add to 100 then?
No, it says right here, I knew that would be a question. Although these increases total more than 244,000, which is our new revenue, the decrease in the Monty Tech assessment adds to that buying power, if you will. And other savings we were able to make through adjustments in smaller accounts like supplies or continued efficiencies in regionalization or town staff.
Okay.
And then I take you through each part of the budget. So town departments went up by 3%, okay, mostly due to increases in employee costs and the aforementioned software. Okay, the QRSD assessment is a 3.39% increase over last year. And as I said many times, Monty Tech went down by 70%. So overall education is a 1.75% increase over the FY21 budget.
So the 3.39 is what you want to pay and we want to pay.
That is what I believe the town can afford, yes.
Okay.
And that takes into account information from the state that it is more likely than not that the federal funding called the ESSER grant, and details we can get into, are going to cover minimum local contributions. And as the board knows, minimum local contribution in Hubbardston is high compared to its peers. So it's what the state is saying Hubbardston should pay. And then additional money for assessment comes from what schools believe that we should pay above the minimum, which most towns do. So it's not odd that they would request more than the minimum. The federal grants are going to pay for the minimum local contribution increases and changes this year, which means 3.39% increase may even equate to double that.
Do you, so what we've tried to do over the last couple of years is let the schools know that we just don't care about ourselves. We care about our entire district and the other towns. You know, as you talked about before, I made the sort of the rounds to the other select boards -1 before COVID hit, and it wasn't like, okay, great, we got lucky this year, let's just forget about everybody else and worry about ourselves. That wasn't the point, right? Have you seen how the projections are to other towns yet this year?
Yeah, so I'm not trying to tease it like a good TV show, but the Quabbin regional assessments, I'll show you what my math is, and those are certainly not the final numbers, but it does give you a picture. As Jeff said, how can you be confident in the numbers? This is how. No, I'm just going to pop it up now, so we're not continually talking about it. Give me 1 second. You guys are like me. You're like, what is the assessment?
We wouldn't ask if we didn't care.
That's what everybody wants to know. I get it. Okay. So again, these are preliminary numbers pulled from the initial report, and then I discussed with school officials their initial budget presentation that was on February 6th at their school committee meeting. So they're requesting or budgeting a $37 million plus budget, which is a 6% increase over their budget last year. You take out capital projects and debt, which come from a different part of the budget, and you're left with a certain amount to apportion. I don't expect everyone to enjoy all this numbers, but this is their revenue money that comes from the state. And then district revenue includes any grant monies plus any use of what they call their excess and deficiency, very similar to our free cash. So that, what I'm talking about with ESSER is, let's assume that the state and federal government's going to cover the minimum local contribution, which seems to be the trend. And hopefully the federal government package that is being discussed right now is also going to include additional money locally for education. We can hope and pray. That would cover the minimum local contribution, which takes a good whack out of the budget impact. So that would leave down here, if this budget holds, Hubbardston's assessment increase would be 7.96%, or $355,000 increase from last year, which is a little bit more than $100,000 more than all the new revenue we have combined for this year. So it would require an override without paying $1 in any other area. You can see the other assessment increases in Barry, Hardwick, New Braintree, because most of their money comes from minimum local contribution, has a very small increase, and then OCAM's numbers here. So if you remember, Hardwick had almost no ability to pay last year's assessment, and their reserve situation has not gotten any better. So in my opinion, a 14% increase would put the town in receivership. So that's just my opinion. My opinion only. I don't know that, and probably shouldn't say it.
So this again, so this 8% for us, the 7-ish, that assumes we will receive the ESSER too, or does not?
Assumes that we would.
Assumes we would. So it's even worse if we don't.
Correct.
And everybody's kind of, okay, understood. Thank you.
Schools are very complicated. Schools are also in horrific shape right now. trying to juggle between the state mandating that they reopen, also following COVID policies and having revenue wax themselves. So the school debate is not just happening in Hubbardston, and it happens every year, but it's going to be even worse this year. All right, back to the presentation. So I've mentioned it a couple of times, but Worcester Regional really whacked us this year. So a good chunk of our new revenue is covering that cost. I did ask them, because I knew you'd want me to, what happens if we don't pay it? And they said then the state comes in and takes it from your state aid. So
Why did it go up so much?
it's a combination of paying off the liabilities that were unfunded years and years ago, and increases in staff costs.
But that sounds more like a one-time thing than anything when you lead with that. Right?
If we get into a relative employee structure that doesn't change much, which we are, and the liabilities stay the same, you should see fairly strong increases, but not 15% increases for the next few years. However, we're paying right now for the sins of 30 years ago where they didn't attack the liability at all. And we will be paying that for the next 12 years. When 12 years is up, you're going to see a massive reduction in these assessments, but hopefully none of us are are dealing with the budget at that point. It's a hard pill to swallow, but the state basically came in into all the retirement systems and said, you need to fix yourselves. And they are, which is a good thing, but it really hurts towns and assessments.
Yep.
Okay, capital, I'll talk about it in its own section. And then warrant articles, all that's being proposed here is a $15,000 set aside for the town center project. We have to potentially acquire right-of-way rights along the town center. Most, if not all, people donate this money, but we want to make sure that we don't hold the project up with any costs we'd have to pay. We would have to pay costs if someone wanted us to pay fair market value for their easements.
Just to be clear, they wouldn't donate the money, they would donate their land.
The land, yes. And almost always it's donated. So I think this is more than enough. And
One other
then
thing to add, just real quick to that. So we recently have a plan that's been going back and forth between Ryan, between council, between our engineers, TEC, and Mass DOT, the representative who handles the right of ways. And so there's a very specific plan that shows everybody's right of ways. All the abutters will be notified. So it's in process now so that nobody sort of feels like they're getting stolen from. So we'll see how that goes and reactions or whatnot. So we haven't actually seen it yet, but that process has recently begun.
it should be, people should be receiving letters in the next week or two as we start the process of notifying folks, figuring out who's going to donate, and then addressing the acquisitions as necessary. But again, most people donate the land because of the improvement that's coming from the town center project. So we're not overly concerned, and we can deal with people's concerns on a one-on-one basis, and happy to do so. So then the next part of this presentation is employees by department. This is important because people always want to know, are you adding people, subtracting people? And I think it's important to be transparent with that. So by department, the changes are noted here. We went from an IMA with Templeton to our own accountant, which is why this shows as an increase in employees. We went from having a live assessing assistant to going remote with RRG in a contract, so that's a reduction. And then we split Bobby's position, as you know. She's now in the Treasury Department, so that's adding an employee there. And then subtracting, we combined a bunch of positions for land use with Mallory, so that's why Health and Concom are subtracted, but land use is up by 1. And planning is down and building is down because of that regionalization. So overall, the increase in full-time employee equivalents. So full-time employees in Hubbardston work 35 hours or 40 if they're public safety or DPW. The total increase represented by this budget proposal is 0.26 hours. And that is for the additional hours for the accountant and the additional hours for assisting the Board of Selectmen and the executive while adding to the finance department. So reorganized.
broadly, what would this look like if there were no CARES Act contributions towards, police and fire and stuff?
Oh, without CARES Act this year, the way we've been providing services, there would be at least 1.5 more full-time equivalents on the public safety side. But that'll go away when CARES goes away, so 0.26 overall. And then this breaks down employees by other types of categories. So we have 25 full-time employees in town, but 83 employees overall, to include reserve, on-call, per diem, election workers, senior work off, and then that doesn't include people who work for us by contract. So it's a fun and interesting mix, but each one of them is important and each one of them is represented in this budget. So not to gloss over anything, but there's a ton of detail available for department levels. Big things in general government are the reorganizations of the town staff that have been talked about a couple times. This board's new 3-year agreement with me, which increased my salary, which is in this budget and is transparently presented. The town clerk reduced their budget because of went from 4 elections to 1, so that's a big reduction. And then the information technology increases is mostly for allowing the content management system that's going to allow us to more accurately and efficiently do public records requests and build upon information from the past. Also go paperless and add more space to the town offices. On the public safety side, the increases were primarily for staff. So adding the ability for the police to fund shifts, we've been doing this incrementally, less than 0.5% increase to their budget a year, but trying to get to the point where we can have two police officers on duty at all time and not leave a police officer alone on a shift for safety reasons and for the ability to provide proper levels of service to the town. Fire additions include a couple step raises. We're retaining our employees longer, which is great, but it adds a little bit of expense, and also trying to entice, as we've had conversations in the past, through stipends, more folks to come and serve during that call time to bridge the gap when we can't provide full-time coverage. The increases in dispatch, I've talked about a couple times, and animal control is a contractual agreement we have with Gardner to increase their contract by 2.5% a year. Public Works employees make up the major increases. We did add some money for details and fuel. The DPW fuels all the departments. Many years ago, fuel was consolidated into the DPW, and there was money for that, but it has never increased. So they're continuing to provide fuel for police and fire. We need to start addressing that deficit, or it's going to eat into our ability to provide DPW services. And then the new contract for details includes provisions for our officers to make one rate and funding that. Unfortunately, we need to pay for that with the DPW sometimes. So there's an increase there. Education we talked about, and I'll get into more detail I did get into that with more details. So you understand where we are with the Quabbin Regional School District assessment and what I believe will happen there. And I'll talk about strategies if that assessment doesn't decrease and what the board wants to do with that. Monty Tech continues to save our budget with decreases in assessment, but that can't continue forever. And at some point that will have to go up as well. Indirect costs, Worcester Regional was the big whack here, and a 4 to 6% increase on our general insurance are the highlights for indirect costs. And debt, we do continue to do a good job managing debt. So the decreases in our debt this year are based off of interest rates falling and our ability to secure cheaper debt. However, when we get to the debt section, you'll see, and we've talked about a bunch, that there's a decision point coming in a couple of years when $180,000 a year comes off the budget because of debt service ending. So I'm going to go into capital and debt. Is there any questions on the expense side of the budget? I can stop here just to see if anyone has any questions.
So I guess, when do you want to talk about how we feel about raising the municipal employees by 3%.
So this budget does include a recommendation for that 3% increase. It's its own separate item tonight, but certainly it's all connected. So my worry with employee wages, not only is it retention and the ability to keep the talented people we have now, but also the minimum wage increase is slowly creeping into municipal government. So you don't have to provide minimum wage by law, but in my opinion, you should, and it makes us competitive on the lower end of our employment scales to not offer wages that are below minimum wage. So you're asking people to complete complex municipal duties for less money than someone would make in a minimum wage job, say at Walmart or McDonald's or any other place that's famous for providing minimum wages. So I don't think that's a problem that we can solve in 1 year, but next year is the year that minimum wage goes to $15, and our lowest scale is at 13 and change. So I wouldn't hire anybody on that lowest part of the scale, and we haven't been. We've been hiring them at, say, A6 or B1 in order to avoid that. But we should be pushing wages so that we can stay competitive. Otherwise, you get into a situation where we were a couple of years ago, where you need to make large market adjustments, and it eats up even more of the budget. So if you can incrementally increase the wage scales by 0.5%, 1% in years, then you can prevent the big changes that you have to make, or reorganizations, or paying for that wage structure by just following the way wages go. So that's my recommendation, knowing that we have budget problems and there's many things to address. That is my argument for including it in my budget.
All right, I knew you'd have a solid answer prepared. So
Try not to waste money.
So I get it. We talk about it every year, and we're pretty stingy, I think, overall. But you gotta be competitive. I understand that too. Do you know offhand? Again, because it's overall such a small part of our budget. Do you know how much of an increase from 2 to 3% or 0 to 3%, whatever? Do you know that offhand, just so we can have a number in our head?
Yes, I'll give you the exact number. 1 second. So this is all very public. I'd be happy to share with anybody.
And this doesn't include, our big expenditures are union contracts typically, or contracts with chiefs or you or whatnot. This doesn't include any of that.
So the increase for non-union at 2%, which would be a step increase for our non-union employees that most municipal governments give, schools definitely give. The 2% increase for everyone this year, to include the contractual changes you made with me and the chief, is $30,000. So contractual increases of $8,200 and non-contractual of $21,000 or $29,000 together. To increase that on the non-union side to 3%, or to add 1%, would add $6,800 to the budget. So if you cut the 1% out that I included, which is certainly a consideration to be made any year in the budget, you'd save approximately $7,000.
Thank you. I mean, it's always important, like you just said, but sometimes it's more important than other times. And it may, as the budget process evolves, right? It may be something we have to discuss again. So I just wanted to understand the numbers there. So I appreciate that.
All right. Seeing no more expense questions, we'll go to the capital budget. So the CIPC, the board's capital improvement planning committee, does a great job making recommendations. I'm heavily involved in that on behalf of the board, and I know the board tracks it. So none of this is much of a surprise, except for 2 requests from the school. One is for an elevator repair, which has came up in a note from me to you to say that it was coming. And then they asked for cafeteria equipment, or cafeteria equipment cabinet. So $55,000 in requests from the school. That could also increase maybe to $60,000, but the elevator repair quote we have is $48,000. So that's what Cheryl and I said should go in the budget, is $50,000 for that elevator repair. So with that added to the CIPC's recommendation from this year, there's a total cost of $193,000 for the capital plan. Two things that I did include that the CIPC did not is using the Holden Hospital account. So this is for when they close Holden Hospital, we get a chunk of money each year to support hospital and emergency services. One of the things that we can spend it on is emergency vehicle equipment. And although the fire utility vehicle is not used exclusively for that, we do feel that 25% of its service is used for emergency response. So we're going to inject some of that, or request or recommending that you inject some of that to offset some of the free cash usage. And then the police cruiser will receive some type of turn-in, is that what it's called? Yeah, turn-in value for the current cruiser. So I reduced the request down a little bit to get to that $193,000 number.
Ryan, if you go back to that for a second, if we, cyber stalked and found a cafeteria equipment cabinet for $49.95, wouldn't the school pay for that?
Yes.
Okay. Get on it, Katie.
We're including this because we want to make sure that they have all the capital they ask for, and they don't really ask for much except for that big school roof, right? But they did try and grant fund this, and we do believe it'll be grant funded, but we just want to make sure the funds are there. And there certainly is conversations about what the threshold is in terms of expenses, but this just captures what they need for now and allows you to adjust in the future. This is just a chart showing the capital plan and FY22 of 193,000. You can see some big costs coming up in future years as capital, as always, is deferred. The big one being FY25 of 24, where you're looking at $1 million in costs because of the new fire truck request. And also the capital plan includes, as did the CIPC recommendation, large alternative fund source projects. So the town is looking at investing with the capital plan more than 1.5 million into the town using our funds and other funds. In terms of debt, as I mentioned, we do a good job managing the debt. Sandy does a great job with this, and the town's done some thinking and planning about debt, which is helpful. So in FY22, if you include the school debt, which we pay for our roof project that is almost done paying for in a few years, we have 2.92% of our budget is dedicated to debt service, which is good. Our goals are 3 to 5%, so we're right there on the low end of our want. You do want to keep some debt in your budget so you can borrow for future big projects, but not so much that it strangles current operations. So one big thing that's coming up in FY24 is the end of the $1.3 million road project, which is going to take, and then the dump truck borrow from 2015, which is going to take 180,000 plus out of the operating budget. Recommendations from the CIPC have been to use that borrowing power to fund the fire engine that you saw in the capital plan on the previous slide. That'll fit in nicely and allow some budget relief while still funding a project that will not need a debt exclusion. And then we've also included some of the CPA here that doesn't affect the operating budget, but we are tracking that and trying to borrow all together to increase the borrowing power that we have as a town. So my recommendation under debt service, looking at this chart, which is the 5-year projection, is that you take the advice of the CIPC and take advantage of the money for debt service in the budget to fund perhaps the fire truck and the ambulance or some type of building construction using that debt so that you have the ability to borrow and fix projects without having to go to the taxpayers for tax increases. That will put pressure back onto the operating budget. You could use that savings to help with the operating budget, but that's just going to kick the problem down the road and would have a similar impact to tax rates. Okay, and then reserves. Reserves are big. We talk about them a lot. They're important, as we saw in COVID years, and also for all this borrowing that we plan on doing. So with a $9.6 million operating budget and the $15,000 recommendation that I made earlier in the warrant article section, our town reserves, our target is 5%, and we're creeping up to closer to that at 4.57. Capital stabilization is at 0.6. We're targeting 1%. And then this budget recommends reserving 100,000 in free cash. So in total, we're looking to 8 to 10% for our reserve funds, and we are at 6.21, which is good, not great. And as I've shown in past analysis, we need to continue to invest in savings in order to make sure that we're keeping where we should in terms of best practices. And then, a little bit of good news, the financial forecast. So what does this budget proposal do to the next 5 years worth of budgets? Last year, we were looking at 300 to 1.3 million in costs. We've really been able to control costs. And I know sometimes it just sounds like we're spending money, but we have been controlling costs. We have been taking advantage of grant funding, et cetera. And we've been able to reduce some of the expected deficits in the structural deficit that was referenced earlier down to 200,000 in FY23 to 900,000 in FY27. And this assumes 6%, 5 to 6% school budget growth, which is why another reason why I'm recommending that the town can't really afford an assessment increase that's more than what's being proposed in this budget. If you were to increase that percentage, then these numbers skyrocket. This also doesn't take into account that we had 120,000 in new growth this year, and this is only predicting 30, which is more of a normal number for us. That's how year to year we can say that we're going to have these deficits and still come in with a balanced budget. We're just somehow able to find the money year to year. So what's next? I've teased this a few times. So the QRSD assessment as it's currently constructed, which is nearly 8%, which would be more than $350,000 in new monies. This budget includes 244,000 in new revenue, so it would be more than the new revenue we have combined. It would explode the 5-year budget deficit, as I stated, to increase the school assessment to that much. And I think everybody knows.
Real quick, if extrapolated at 8%.
So the next 5 years would be extrapolated at 6%. So adding 8%.
Just if it goes 8.66666 versus 3.4. 6666, that's how much it will go up?
Yeah, instead of looking at a $900,000 deficit, we'd be looking at a $1.6 million deficit in 5 years. So that would certainly trigger, if not one or multiple overrides to try and overcome that, because to try and get it all at once wouldn't be possible. And then you would eat those funds up quickly, so you would need more. So so schools need funding as well. And this isn't just you get to pay what you want to pay type situation. I'm not naive. So what I'd be recommending to the board is you could adjust revenue projections, saying we're going to squeeze every dollar out of potential revenue. There's big problems in that if you don't hit your revenue projections, which is why no one does it. Last year, we took a whack at the end of the year because of COVID. We don't expect the same this year, but it happens. And if you did, you would have to use your free cash and you'd have nothing left to fund any other project or the budget last year, which we used 100,000 in free cash for. You could inject one-time revenues. So like I said, we took free cash out of this budget. You could put it back in, which would put us back into another deficit situation with 100,000 right up front being a hole in the budget. But that would increase your buying power and allow you to make up some assessment gap. You can consider an operational override. I know the board has expressed some desire not to do that in a pandemic or a recession, but it would be necessary with much of an increase. As you can see, the budget increases are pretty lean and there's not a lot to cut. And then you could reduce your capital plan and squeeze even more one-time revenues out if you needed to get to the 8% number, but didn't want to cut services. Okay, if we got more money than we thought we were going to, which is fun to put in here, but not likely, my recommendation would be to fund your town reserves and then fund any additional capital projects. So fight the urge to fund projects and continue to put money away in town reserves for the borrowing we're going to be doing. We want to make sure that our finances stay strong. So I can break the budget down in any other way or show you any more detail, but that is the high level presentation. My recommendation to you for what the budget should look like this year. If we were to pass that type of budget, we wouldn't see any major increases in services. However, we would be able to meet some financial goals and hit some objectives that have been important and continue to control growth so that we don't have to go to the taxpayers for operational budget. And we can focus on some of the longer term problems that the board's been trying to solve, like building construction or capital or road infrastructure. I don't think that you can do both in a town that doesn't have a history of overrides. So this is what that type of budget would look like.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm pleased for you that, we were able to, I know there's a few highlights in there, but one of the major ones is since you started here, wanting to get rid of that free cash. And we did this year, So I think, some of that obviously is because of the new growth allowed us to be able to do it. But who cares what the reason is? The fact that we're there is important to try and stay there. So I don't know. I think that's great news. And as far as the wage increases, the 7,000 or so to go up to 3%, when there's so many other factors involved, when there's morale involved, when there's what's justified based on competitive salaries to adjacent towns. I think all those things. So I don't know. That's just sort of 2 cents on that. I don't know if anyone else has to add anything to what we just saw.
Just to illustrate that last point. So we just lost one of our police officers who went to another town and a good opportunity. One of the things in the exit interview was the ability to pay wages. And I don't think our wages are terrible for the region for our police department. I think we do a good job, but we can't offer some of the wages that even moderately bigger towns can provide. So you also see if you scan any of the municipal employment sites that everybody's looking for police officers right now. So there's only so many that have academy training. And the reason why that's important is we want to bring someone in that can work right away. Because if not, we have to send them to the academy for several months and pay them while they're at the academy and then still cover that shift on overtime. So bringing in a new police officer, and this is true for a lot of our positions, costs $30,000 or so, which we don't have. It costs the same as adding an employee just to bring them on. And then if you train them for a couple of years and they leave, then you're going to have to continually do that. So there is a cost to not, I know it sounds like I'm just advocating for employee raises, but there's a huge cost to the turnover and the continual training, not only in just service levels, but the ability to attract. So it is cheaper to retain your employees. There has to be a limit on that in a small town budget. I get that. But I think we're getting close to that type of approach, and it's paid off recently with some retention that's allowed us to stabilize.
Okay. Anything else from anyone? All right. Okay, not seeing anything. Thanks a lot, Ryan. Good way to leave things. All right, so moving on to our interim town administrator selection. You want to invite David in?
All right, he's here. And I apologize earlier when my beast attacked everybody on the screen, but I've controlled my dog, so.
Well, mine's barking in the background. I don't know if you can hear it. I have not. So, all right. Welcome again, David. I know you haven't met all of us yet, or maybe you have outside of the Zoom meetings here. But so Ryan, we've got him on the agenda here, and what business do we need to do formally?
For those who don't know, I'm being called to active duty for 1 year. So the board and I have worked to try and find a temporary replacement. We got several good applicants, one of them being David Nixon, who comes with a tremendous amount of experience, recently retired, served in Hadley for 15 years. Hadley is a similar sized town to Hubbardson. 15 years as their town administrator. Tremendous amount of experience. We introduced David to the staff, and the board interviewed David as well as someone who could come in and work in a little bit more than a half-time role to work with me and staff to keep things working while I'm deployed overseas. So that's the situation. I was empowered by the board to negotiate with David. It was a simple negotiation. He asked for the same wage that the board granted me. And the only stipulation in the contract that's in your packet is some time off, which is not unanticipated. So it's a prorated 4 weeks vacation or 88 hours is the only real other sticking point in the town administrator contract that you could consider publicly. So tonight you would have to appoint David as the acting town administrator and then consider voting for the contract that's in your packet as presented to you.
Okay, sounds good. So we have been given that, and we've had a chance to talk to David. Does anyone have any questions? We'll turn it over to David in a sec if he has anything, but does anyone have any questions? I guess if you weren't here for us or Ryan or for David, please, let him fly if you do.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you to Ryan for your service.
Hey, David, thank you. Okay, David, you have anything you need to say to us, or it didn't look like anyone else on the board has anything to ask here, so we're at the point where we can take care of some business here.
I'm looking forward to meeting each and every one of you and having a chance to have a conversation about Hubbardston and how I can be helpful during this transition period, and make everything as smooth as possible for Ryan when he returns.
All right, sounds good. Well said. We chose you because you presented well. We chose you because you have a lot of experience, which some of those things we're going to be leaning on you for. So you presented yourself like you're up for it, and we'll have some fun.
It'll be fun.
All right. Okay. Well, somebody want to start the process?
I'll make the motion that we appoint David Dixon as the interim town administrator.
I'll second that.
Okay. It's
I don't wanna-
into
I
discussion.
don't want to be
All right.
picky, but it's acting town administrator. We clarified that with council. So acting town administrator.
All right, I'll amend that we appoint David as the acting town administrator.
So full-time, you said? No, wait, what? I'm just kidding, Ryan. So,
If it's interim, you're firing me here in front of everybody. So no big deal.
okay, all right. So sorry about that. So I know this is important. So anyway, so that was the motion for acting amended.
I'll second it.
Okay, that amendment seconded. Okay. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, we will vote. Roll call. Dan, yes. Jeff?
Yes,
Katie?
Oh, yes, sorry. I
Okay. I can
apologize.
tell if you were frozen. You were super still. Like, well done. Pat
Yes.
and Chris.
Yes.
Okay, unanimous. Excellent. So that's one item of business. So the second item of business is to approve the contract for the newly appointed acting town administrator. You up for that, Jeff?
yes. I move that we accept the contract for the acting town administrator as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay, seconded by Katie. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote. Roll call. Dan, yes. Jeff?
Yes,
Katie?
Yeah,
Pat?
Yes.
And Chris?
Yes.
All right. It's unanimous. Welcome aboard, David.
Thank you very much.
All right, sounds good. So, we'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thanks, David. He was fully subjected to Lori in the town offices and survived and came back. And she told me that that's a good sign. So
All right. Sounds good. So, all right, moving on, Ryan. We good?
good.
Sounds good. So, next item, another important item, 5B is the municipal building discussion. What do you want to talk about?
So this item was, I was told to put this on the agenda in the future. You have recommendations from me in the CIPC to consider constructing a public safety building here in Hubbardston. So my recommendation to the board would be to entertain that, put together a committee or study if that's what you want. I would not bring this to the town immediately. Based off the survey results, this is supported by a vast majority of people that do want to address this problem. However, they want more information and they want maximum transparency. So if I was to give a recommendation to the board, it would be to make a presentation at this year's town meeting about what that would look like, what it would involve, and a potential timeline, and bring that to the town again, either at the next annual town meeting or in the fall, if you wanted to move faster. So that's my recommendation. Do with it as you will. As I've stated too many times, this is a problem that's not going to go away. And I do know that you have a CIPC that is itching to help you try and figure out this long-term problem and really set the town up for success for the next 30 to 50 years.
Okay, so let me just jump in real quick. So I was on the senior center building committee, which began as a senior center and or public safety, separate, together, all that sort of stuff. So part of the funding that was obtained to be able to put together the preliminary analysis and schematic plan or whatnot involved a police station and a public safety facility. So when it was determined that there was not enough interest, I guess, at the time, or because there was money coming through a grant to be able to fund a portion of the senior center, or, which was spent to acquire land and put a well in and all that other stuff. Basically at the time, as a committee that I was on, we basically said, okay, we paid for this public safety study, a design of it, many meetings about it. We would package it up, put it in its folder and put it in the file cabinet, right? So that's what was done. So there's already a fair amount not too long ago that's been done. So it's not like we have to come up with a bunch of money, like 25 grand or 50 grand right off the bat here, to be able to have a basis to now that we know we've taken the temperature of the town several different ways. And if a building is going to be supported, it feels like we all agreed that that's the one that would be. So we actually have something tangible that we can, maybe move along, like Ryan just talked about there, which is a sort of initial presentation without really any expense to say, hey, this is what it would look like, this is what it would cost, and just basically start that discussion. So I don't know, I just wanted to sort of lay it out there with a little bit more detail that that's a track we could take.
And just nothing to lose, I'm leaving today. So the recommendation you might make is to tell the CIPC to work to get all of those documents and presentations together and to make a presentation to you that could then be given to the town at town meeting with what this might look like. And for those who are, interested, the plan that the CIPC discussed did not ignore the other problems in town, being town office space, the library, and the senior center. The recommendation they made was very focused on there needs to be a step one and then a plan for the future, which could include revenues, as you'll see from the HCA you're going to sign later, from one-time revenues that come from marijuana, or the expiring debt that's coming up in the operating budget, just other ways besides taxes to fund the other parts of this plan. So the plan was to make sure that all of the problems were addressed, but to start with one so that the town could move forward. Because if no one moves out of the Slade building or fire doesn't move out of their initial buildings, then nothing's going to happen. Something has to happen first. So you could use the CIPC in that way or create another board, however you see fit.
Well, it sounds good. Just to say one more thing on it. So the earlier the better. It was not done correctly with the senior center. And that didn't have anything to do with the building committee at the time. It had been injected to the public a little early because there was some money available. And so, some some people got together and really tried to just not force it through or be secretive, but just get it in early without people really having enough information. And that was a big problem, we found out. So, you know, one of the major components of why it's so difficult to get these things done is people just don't understand why so much stuff has to go into it. And I literally mean a building. Like, I learned so much about like why, you know, if you build a new one, why you have to have X amount of square feet for this or that or whatever else. Those are all statutory requirements. And if after the town hears, because all those have to go in, they don't want to do it anymore, fine. I mean, we can't control that. But at least we have, you know, information that we can present that details why these things are included and why the costs are what they are, from a, you know, architect and construction manager that builds this stuff all the time. That, you know, we're starting off with some really solid information for people to make a decision on. So I don't know. I think it sounds like a good idea to do a you know, a overall sort of presentation, as, you know, this is what we're thinking about, and see where it goes from there. I mean, it can't hurt, right?
Is the CIPC, are they taking the lead on this? Is that their feeling on this?
So they offered that as a recommendation arm of this board. You know, they could be used in that way in their quote unquote off season. Engage that board again to come up with a recommendation to the town and to you, so that they can dig into the weeds a little more than you can at your meetings. Flush it out.
I'm with Dan on this. Definitely, let's you know, move ahead with it.
I agree too. I can't see any reason why we can't get at least a plan together, and it needs to be a good thought out plan. So why not, let's give it to the CIPC and let's start, you know, dig out that old plan and refresh it and present it to us.
Yeah, sounds good. And Ryan and David, you know, I have all that stuff somewhere. So just, you know, I can be a resource for whatever is required of the CIPC and whoever's working along with them. All right. Anybody else have anything else they want to add to this, you know, at this point? No? Okay. All right. Well, this is why we didn't stick our heads in the sand, right? At least just keep something moving forward here. That's what we're trying to do. Whatever it may yield, we'll find out. But okay. Well, I guess moving on here, we've got some guests. We've got 5C. We've got the Marijuana Host Community Agreement, Paper Crane Provisions, Inc. We seem to have something new every meeting. Can you tell us why we're meeting about this again, Ryan? And I don't mean to say that in any bad way. Things seem to evolve pretty consistently with this.
Hey, Dan, I'm going to recuse myself from this section. And could you just text me or something when you're off this topic?
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Okay, so this is coming up again because there's been a change to the plan for Bowie, who I've invited into the room. Originally, the plan was for a retail store and indoor cultivator, but to start the project off, he wanted to engage in a tier 6 outdoor grow. So the board empowered me to again negotiate a host community agreement for what that would look like. He also brought to you the idea of adding a courier service to the retail store, but he's decided that he wants to pull that out as a separate entity and not confuse it with the outdoor grow. So what's being proposed here is a host community agreement that would allow up to a tier 6, which is 50,000 square feet, outdoor grow at 56 Gardner Road. The same provisions, I've highlighted them in the host community agreement that we negotiated between myself, Bowie Council, and Bowie's Council, that would continue to provide minimum payments for this host community agreement up to 3% of gross sales, which if the outdoor grow is successful at that level would be significant revenue for the town. It also included some provisions, some strengthening provisions to make sure that the that Bowie is hiring, or at least attempting to hire locally, which he's committed to, and to make sure the same provisions as in our other HCA's were in there, to include security and a focus on mitigating any concerns from the residents, like odor or noise, light, etc. So council is very satisfied. The HCA is not that much different than previous ones that you've had, except some of those provisions I just discussed adding. And it does secure some revenue if this is to kick off the ground. And I know Bowie's here to talk for himself, but I believe they plan on presenting this to the planning board for a special permit is really all they have left to get going.
Yeah, and that's what I was just basically going to say. Unless there's any questions the board have, right off the bat here, we'd love to hear sort of what the next steps are going to be from Bowie if he's available to talk.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hey, everyone. So, Ryan, that was a perfect summary of what's going on. Basically, all of you probably know just from word around town that my prior submission back in December got a little complicated due to some engineering stuff because of the watershed. So that project is going to take much more time. I kind of had to go back to the drawing board, which is not a problem, but in order to just make sure we kind of get something in the works for this year, this outdoor grow, it's kind of just proposing it as a 1-year thing. So we don't miss the summer of 2021. And it would just leave the property as is and as is condition. I filed with the DCR to put up a fence and just grow outdoor directly in the ground, kind of a crop conversion. That was an apple orchard for a long time. Some of you probably know that. And just take it back to very basic in-ground cannabis cultivation for the year.
Okay, so do you expect to come back annually for an annual extension or whatever the right word is for this, or what
So the goal, and I actually just submitted my special permit on Friday and dropped the hard copies off to Mallory today. So the goal would be to grow this year, dry and cure the harvest in my existing buildings there with some just minimal renovation inside, and then cut it down, sell it. It's a big harvest. And then hopefully by that time, at some point in the summer, have my actual special permit amended for my complete build out, which would be a reduced greenhouse footprint from the last time. So it's down to about 14,000 square feet roughly. And then some mixed use, new construction, and then the general, the general renovation of the lot. So it's basically just a kind of a one-shot outdoor while we get the engineering and everything set for the larger expansion.
Okay, how you feeling about this? With the changes and stuff like that, you feeling still like you're pushing forward? We're partnering
Well, this
with the town
is
here?
absolutely. So this is the outdoor would be a great start. So that's actually my I come from an agricultural background. I'm from South Florida originally, and I grew up on a big farm. So outdoor cultivation is kind of what I've known my whole life. And the rest of the project is moving along great. I have a new landscape architect who's helping me kind of navigate the engineering and the design in the watershed zone, which is at the back of my property. And we'll have it squared away in the next 3 to 5 months. And in the meantime, we can, have this pretty substantial outdoor harvest with, very little, visual or really any effect.
Okay, do we need, and this is for Bowie and Ryan, and whoever else may know, but do we need any further notifications with time periods for responses or whatnot, similar to those steps that we took over the last year or so, plus for this that you know of?
Yeah, so let me see here. basically, we would sign this today, and then it would be, all our just regular approvals that are happening with the DCR, just, the building permit would really just be a fence permit. So, we would just go through the motion, but this is, and everything is actually in motion already. If you may or may not be able to take a peek at the special permit packet. So yeah, this is really just what's needed to get it rolling. And I'm confident we could get to plants in the ground by July at the latest, which is absolutely fine. A lot of people actually prefer planting a little bit later to keep plant size down. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Brian, anything to add there?
No, just that the special
yeah.
permitting process still needs to happen with the planning board. They are the ones who can issue this type of license in the commercial zone as presented. So the board is saying, if that special permit is granted by the planning board, then the parameters of the deal are what's found in the host community agreement. So the board isn't saying yes or no to the facility, it's saying yes or no to the parameters of the facility existing. And then protections exist from the town by the issuance of the special permit through the planning board. So we've met all the requirements except for signing this host community agreement and having it move on to the special permit process where, I know this can be controversial, but residents who have an issue with the specifics of the plan should be going to that meeting to discuss them with the planning board before the special permit is issued.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. And there should be just a little bit of emphasis put on things, like if there's any correspondence with the CCC, I think, Ryan, if they correspond with you primarily, so well, that's going to change, right?
Yes, and we've had minimal so far because we just haven't gotten that far
Okay.
yet, but
Yep. So
we tell them that you're in compliance with our zoning, et cetera.
Exactly. So with this, after this next agreement, within the next couple weeks, that would be the one thing that I would need a quick sign off on just to keep things moving would be the zoning approval for the CCC. And that's it. And then everything else will be, special permit and Bill and I will be hammering it out.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't have any other questions. Anyone else have any questions before we decide to whether we're taking action on this? No. Okay. So it sounds like the motion would be to sign the revised or new host community agreement, right?
So this would be the backbone of the motion to accept as presented the marijuana host community agreement with Paper Crane Provisions, Inc. for outdoor cultivation at 56 Gardner Road.
Just a quick note, it's Paper Crane Provisions LLC. Sorry, but just wanted to.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, I'll put forward the motion as presented to accept the marijuana host community agreement, Paper Crane Provision LLC, outdoor cultivation, 56 Gardner Road.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. Okay, we'll vote. Roll call. Dan, yes. Jeff?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
And Chris?
Yes.
And just for the record again, so it's unanimous. Pat had recused himself and asked me to let him know when we were done with that topic, which we are now. So thanks for coming in again, Bowie. Good luck.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, so tomorrow I'll be sending out the HCA for signature to the board, and then this process will be moving on to the planning board special permitting process.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Good. Thanks, Bowie. Good night.
We have to get Pat back in, right?
Yeah, I let him know we're done with the weed talking. That's what I told him. It's getting windy out. Anybody else feel their house like shaking right now? Crazy. All right, we'll give it a sec, see if Pat logs right back in. Well, what are we doing next? That is the fiscal year. Okay. He's not back yet.
Wage and classification plan according to the
Yep.
list.
Yeah, I've got it. All right, We can carry on. It's fine. So we'll go to item 5D, which is the fiscal year 22. Basically, because we've already sort of talked about all this stuff, but fiscal year 22 wage and classification plan. This is a little bit more formalizing it, Ryan, and sort of a process that's been ongoing here for the last few years.
Yes, so this is all available on the Human Resources site, and the board has gotten into the best practice of approving the non-union wage plan like we do with contracts with the union, just to make sure that it's clear. We pay this way anyway. It's just a formal acceptance of the classifications, grades, and then the pay plan. So changes this year to the classifications. In the A classification, we've added the senior work-off employee who do earn wages through payroll. Election workers, same thing, and our town clock winder, although the clock has been broken, this position does exist. The B classification, we're adding a cemetery assistant. Marsha's been with us for a long time, but we wanted to get her on the pay plan. And then DPW seasonal workers with $1 extra for employees who need a certification for plowing in the winter. And then the finance assistant is being added to classification E, and the land use coordinator, we're already paying this in practice with Mallory. We've increased her responsibility to a department head level and added her to the F classification. So that would be changes. The pay plan here is the one that I constructed my budget with. So this increased the starting wage from $13.50, 1%, which then in this fancy spreadsheet adds 1% to everything. That is being done to keep up with the market. So you can see here, $14.25 will be the next January will be the Massachusetts minimum wage, which it would take 4 steps on classification A to get to in our current wage plan, which is what I was talking about earlier. So if you were to increase this 1% this year and say 1% next year, then B1 would become our newest lowest starting salary and would be above minimum wage, where it could stay and just have people progress through the steps. So for those aren't familiar, employees increase in step as they are retained and gain experience in town. In order for the board to adjust the pay plan, they would need to do what we're talking about here, which is adding a COLA.
Okay. Can you scoot back to the proposed classification plan real quick? Sorry.
Sure. Is there something you're looking for, Dan?
Just were there any more down below?
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Just figuring you were trying to hide it.
Yeah, I'm a sneaky guy. The positions at the bottom continue. Sorry, this Google's. So this isn't something that I created. This was created by UMass. We hired them to look at our wages 3 years ago now. They created this classification plan. I've just been updating it as we use it, and we have been using it and have been getting employees into the language of this scale in terms of wage expectations and practice.
Okay. You didn't call anything up. You know that, right?
Nothing here. You're just like looking at my face.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm like scrolling through by myself. I apologize.
Okay. So
Let us
we
zoom
went through
out.
E and F. We just wanted to make sure we. Yep. Okay. Okay. So you need us to accept the proposed classification plan and pay plan.
Yes. So if you do accept this, that does not mean that you have to, if the budget goes south or if you want to make changes, you can adjust this at any time. This is not something that is formalized. In fact, this wouldn't take place until July 1st of 2021 or FY22. So you have time to adjust it. It's just, it adds our ability to plan and to do our job as we progress through the budget process.
So I'll make the motion to accept the fiscal year 22 wage and classification plan.
Second it.
Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote. Roll call. Dan, yes. Jeff?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Yes.
And Chris?
yes,
Okay, it is unanimous. Next is 5E, which is to open the annual town meeting warrant for the annual town meeting currently proposed for June 1st, 2021. Location TBD.
So it's just a simple vote to open the warrant as normal. am waiting for warrant articles from the planning board and CPA. Other than that, the town meeting warrant, the normal articles that are on the annual town meeting are done to hand off to David to include the capital plan. The details will change, but the structure's there. And then we'll put it out to all other boards and committees and elected officials if they want to request that the board add any other warrant articles.
Okay, I'll make a motion then to open the annual town meeting warrant for June 1st, 2021.
I'll second that.
Okay, is there any discussion? One question, Ryan, is when did you, I don't think you just said it and I just blacked out, but when will it be closed?
April 12th.
All right, is there any further discussion? Oh, seeing none, we will vote. Roll call. Dan, yes. Jeff?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Yes.
And Chris?
yes,
Okay, it is unanimous. Next, we have 5F fiscal year 22 budget discussion. I think we probably already did that, right? Is there anything else you had there, Ryan?
Nope, that was just so you could discuss it if you wanted to.
Okay. Good. You guys good?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Next is 5G, which is the Board of Assessor meeting discussion. So as you saw in some of Ryan's notes, I had asked that we put this on here for just a sort of a brief discussion. So the reason it's on here is the Board of Assessors haven't been able to meet, through this this pandemic period where their virtual meetings have been required. And basically, they're elected body just like we are, right? It was just something I guess more than anything, just to have a few sort of brains talking about it, to find out whether or not, there's any assistance we could give on it. And before I go a little bit further with that, if Ryan, if you could just give us a brief summary of what two things. One, what sort of meetings they have had over the last year, I guess. And two, what are some important things that the Board of Assessor does, to make sure that the town runs properly.
All right, hold on. Before he starts though, I'm gonna recuse myself from this whole situation because my husband's an assessor and I don't think I should be a part of it. So I'm just gonna turn my stuff off and let me know when you're done.
Sounds good. I will text you.
Okay, so very briefly, the Board of Assessors, as an elected body, is required to certainly sign off on abatements, certify commitments for taxes, have a bunch of administrative functions that revolve around us being able to send out tax bills. We haven't missed any deadlines, but it has been difficult because the Board of Assessors is not meeting regularly. So in full candor, we've had a lot of staff disruptions in the Board of Assessors, and through no fault of the Board of Assessors, it's been difficult to have some continuity there, but we have fixed that. The problem the staff is having is we can't get the assessors to regularly meet. Now, they have petitioned the Board of Health twice to have in-person meetings, and I understand the challenges of meeting remotely, but we're at the point where the staff feels like they can't do their job, and it's going to start impacting the financial sides of the town if we can't get them to meet. So the Board of Health is the deciding body for this, not the staff. So it's not the staff that is preventing them from meeting. It is just the environment that we live in. So the staff is just requesting assistance in trying to figure out how we can either bridge the gap or get them to meet so that we can regularly update the board and complete the functions of government.
Have they asked to meet, in a you know, school gym or something like that that has more room? Like do you even know how the requests have sort of come out to the Board of Health?
Yes, and a member who's been an advocate of trying to get this done has cited many different other states and people who are meeting in large spaces. That the problem with the meetings is, from the Board of Health's perspective, and I won't speak for them, but it's not that you couldn't accomplish it in a space. It's that the public needs to have the ability to go there in order to meet requirements of the open meeting law. So they've said that all meetings need to be virtual, because by holding it non-virtually, you're saying that anyone who doesn't want to do that because of COVID restrictions can't go to that meeting. Whether you agree with that or not, that's the Board of Health argument. So the argument on the assessor side is that they want to meet, but they can't do it unless it's in person because of their membership. So
All right, so just that's what I was getting at. You know, I have sort of a leading question. So I guess, you know, has it been broached to maybe have a virtual meeting in a different location that isn't everybody's house? You know, like the public's not invited to the school for whatever reason, because we can't, because the Board of Health says no, but the Board of Assessors could be there, spaced out appropriately, having recorded meeting, but being in person themselves. Like, is that too sort of cute?
no, and I'm willing to do anything to get them to meet and stop debating the merits of meeting or not meeting. Whatever gets it done, we'll get it done. We're just looking for, and you know me well enough to know I wouldn't bring this to the staff wouldn't bring this to the board unless we just need some assistance getting this completed, because Board of Assessors are one of the most important boards we have. We can't have them not meet.
Is there room where we used to meet, Ryan? I mean, how many members are we talking?
Talking 3 members, but again, the Board of Health will not let anybody meet, not virtually right now.
But
Yeah, I would think there could be distance enough where we meet and the cameras are all there. We just need someone to set it up and operate it from where they normally do, correct?
It might just be as simple as you offering that. It's just the message isn't getting through from me or my staff.
well, why don't we do that then? I think that's a good idea. Well, I mean, what's the worst that can happen? You know, the Board of Health has to say no because of some reason that we don't understand, but fine. I mean, why not throw it out there? And it doesn't just have to be that. That can be an example of a place, but it doesn't have to be the only place. And if
But it would be a lot easier because it's all set up. And what does it take? One person to operate that from behind the scenes?
right, or even just, we've done before where no people, they just set it up and it turns on and then it gets recorded and then they cut out the time before and after that they're actually meeting. So, you know, could be even easier than that.
There has to be the ability for the public to participate. So that could be done as long as someone's broadcasting it on Zoom and people can come into the room, quote unquote. But that could be done too.
Yeah, let's try to figure something out and get it done.
I would suggest a joint letter to the Board of Health and the Board of Assessors as a broker.
Sounds good.
That's the right word.
Let's do it.
What has been their objection to Zoom meetings anyway?
They're not as savvy as you.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, there's some older members on there and I understand.
All right, well, we got a plan. We'll see what happens. Is that fair? Everyone okay with that?
Pat gonna write the letter?
Working on it now, Ryan.
All right, well, sounds good. We'll make sure we put it on another agenda so that we don't forget about it. So, okay, anything else anyone want to add on that? No? Okay, I'm gonna let Katie know we are done with the BOA talk. All right, give her a sec to sort of come back in here. I'm assuming she'll jump right back in. Our next item, which we will talk about, will be, there she is, So the next item will be the old business, which is the town administrator evaluation. So just to set it up a little bit, a while back, we, hey Katie,
Sorry.
you're back. So the next item is the town administrator evaluation. We put some timeframes on getting together our annual TA evaluation for Ryan. Everybody got them in, and Ryan provided us with some comments last week or whenever to that. These are public documents that everyone can review. Ryan, I think I'd just like to throw it out to you first. Is there anything you want to sort of start out with this discussion?
Yes, so thank you for taking the time to evaluate me. I think it's important. I'm trying to learn this job while executing it, and I care pretty deeply about the town and what I'm able to accomplish. So any help is greatly appreciated. Two just big takeaways for me. One being that it was noticed that I'm getting better at coordinating effort amongst different departments and trying to create plans and options for the board, from the staff to the different boards and elected boards. That was a focus. So I appreciate that was both accepted as a practice and noticed. I think that was my biggest strength that I've gained in this last year. On the weakness side, I agree with the board that I'm trying to do a lot of things because I want to do a lot of things for the town and get a lot of things done on behalf of the board and everything. And in that process, sometimes I can either move too fast or maybe not take as much time on something as I want to, because I want to get to the next thing, which can cause me to not communicate or assume that I've communicated or rush. So excellent feedback. I'm going to be gone for a year, but if I wasn't, I would work on that heavily in this year, I'm not going to ever stop trying to do a bunch of things, but at least focus on them in a way that makes sure that each one is done correctly and is given the time that it wants. So those are my two big takeaways. And again, I appreciate them and thank you for taking the time to do it.
Okay. And as I said, again, these are public documents. Anyone ever wants to go over them, I'm not planning on going over them if anyone wants to go over their own or others, that's completely fine. But I mean, they were pretty consistent across the board, which is great to see, is that, your message and effort has been getting across similarly to all of us. Which means you haven't sort of picked favorites or enemies, which is also excellent. My summary, I guess, overall would be that, what we can hope for is that, we don't stagnate as a town in any way, and specifically with such a, in a leadership executive role that you have, and we haven't stagnated. And I think you take that personally not to want to stagnate, right? So it's something that you want to continue to grow. And from, your sort of promise for your first 100 days when you were hired to, 3 years in with a new contract that is obviously a little bit delayed here. I think, you've come up with, providing your end of the bargain, and so I think when you see how people spend time on evaluations and comments and all that, that's because they feel as though, you've put up your side of things and that you deserve, honest responses, both good and bad. So, that would just be a little summary, I guess I'd give on, a very quick snapshot of your first 3 years here with us. Anyone else, feel free if you want to say anything else on this item. I know you've all said things with the evaluation themselves, but please do if you do. All right. We'll do it again. And next year is just going to be, I tell you,
Easy.
we are going to rip you apart next year. All right, well, moving on, we've got the town administrator report, so you're up again.
Okay, I'll be brief here as these are available to the board and public, but in our COVID-19 update, as people can tell, numbers are trending down. Good news with vaccines in the different ways that we've been able to mitigate. Doesn't mean that we need to stop mitigation measures, but Hubbardston is now a great community with less than 10 cases. We have 7 right now as of February 25th and 133 since the COVID-19 outbreak. We're continuing to work with employees to make sure they're safe. And one other update here is if numbers keep trending the way they are and the state reopening plan continues to move, I would be recommending to David actually now and this board that we start phasing the opening of town offices to the public. I do think that needs to be a slow and deliberate effort in order to accommodate employees and make sure everything's done safely. But I could see that happening, you know, at the start of next fiscal year at the latest, and maybe even earlier. In terms of department report, this board knows adding Erin and her talents to the team has been great. She's going to help us address some of the deficiencies found in the 2020 HR report and take up a sort of an HR assistant role in addition to her executive assisting role. This will allow us to offer some of that HR that we were not doing and make sure that we're executing things properly, which I think is going to be a big win to the town for, you know, in the budget constraints that we have. It's good to have this option, and Erin's extremely talented, and we're just excited to have her. We're going to continue moving the document management project that I've been talking about a lot. It's a big project. It's exciting though, and for residents, the #1 draw is going to be you will be able to access street file information online 24 hours a day. And when you ask for a public records request, we're going to be fast and thorough on getting those to you. So the online system is really going to change the way we store documents and retrieve them and make them part of our day-to-day. Financial management, we went over a lot. Infrastructure side, still meeting with the Hubbardston Center School roof project. This has moved up. We had a meeting about the 60% design. Both Dan and Jeff were there. Next, the project OPM and architect will finalize the design and start the public bidding process. So there should be the selection of a construction company in early May, and then early June, when school comes out, is when they're going to start the construction of the roof. Hopefully be mostly done by the time school starts again, with some mitigation for the final pieces to make sure that students are safe. And it looks like, based off school guidance, that schools will be fully opened in the fall. So that will be that'll be good. Additionally, as this board knows, there was a collapse of the police department roof that we had to emergency fix, and then we put fixing the rest of it onto a capital plan. That was done this week, so we were able to shore up sections of the Slade building that were unsafe. And anyone who saw the dumpsters or work being done, that's what was being done at the town offices this week. And lastly, in terms of employee recognition, I don't think it's possible to state how good a job or how much Mallory has worked serving the Board of Health and helping with the vaccinations. She was calling more than 200 people individually to schedule 75 plus, and making sure that everybody in Hubbardston who needed and wanted an appointment got one. That type of individual attention is rare in municipal government, and she was able to facilitate it, extra time, overtime, to make sure that everybody got a spot. And she's continuing to do that for the second shots. Unfortunately, the state has rescinded our ability to provide vaccinations locally. Michael Stoddard and his team, in addition to the Board of Health, did a great job at our local clinic, our Hubbardston clinic, but we will be moving regionally now per guidance from the state. But Mallory was just an absolute force during this process, and she's continuing to partner with Gardner and Rutland to make sure our residents are taken care of. So if you haven't gotten your vaccine yet, we're working to make sure we're communicating how that's going to happen. And a lot of it is being done person to person, phone call to phone call. The reason for that, just so the board's aware and the town's aware, is when you open up a site online and you say, come sign up here, there's a lot of what's called vaccine tourism, where people come and sign up in your town and flood the system. So Rutland, where we've been doing most of our vaccinations, is having us contact people individually to make sure that Hubbardston's prioritized for Hubbardston shots. It's not to mean that we don't want everyone to get vaccinated, but you're supposed to stay in your areas and lanes to get it done. So It'll be more public as we go along, but these first vulnerable populations are being done on a case-by-case basis to make sure they get their shots.
And Michael did send us an email sort of, saying how big of a success getting 200 people in such a well-organized effort through all the parties that Ryan just talked about. Actually saying that, people were actually crying because they, were so happy to have received it, and probably so local to them as well, because you hear all the stories, and especially if you don't have all the move around and many other things, right? And it's been so scary for so many people that people were actually in tears, sort of joy to be able to get it. So I think it was just such a great testament to just helping out your own people in your community, right? So that's great.
Question, why was it rescinded?
That's a question that we're receiving a lot locally. The state has focused on making regional super vaccination sites, and they're the ones delivering the vaccines. So right now, local boards are being instructed to focus on that effort and getting people to those regional larger sites rather than doing it town to town. So it's a state decision, not a local decision. I feel like we had a good system going, thanks to Mallory and the Board of Health and Michael, but we don't control the supply chain, so we're dependent on the state for that.
Okay, all right, thanks, Ryan. That's the last one in a while. So item 8, we are policies to review. I don't see any there. Is that correct? We've got a couple of appointments that we have to deal with. David, we already did, right? We don't have to do that again. So we've got a couple that we've got to take a look at. Denise Kemet for the Economic Development Committee, and Christina for the HR assistant, which is the additional $5,000. That's grant funded for some additional work that she can do. Is that a good way to put that?
Yeah, so Denise is, in your packet, you saw she asked to serve on the EDC, which is down a couple people, which would be great. And Christina, we've been talking about this for a long time, but she's going to use the grant funding, or we're going to use the grant funding to hire her to fix once and for all our HR file issue that we identified during the 2020 HR report and findings. So that's a big win. She's already started, and so she would be appointed to this role. And the next thing would be the wage authorizations for Christina to do that work, and David's authorization to serve as your acting town administrator. 2 things there.
So I'll make a motion to appoint Denise Kemet to Economic Development Committee.
Second the motion.
Seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll go roll call vote. Dan, yes. Jeff?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
And Chris?
Yes.
Okay, it's unanimous.
I'll make a motion to appoint Christina Sutcliffe to HR assistant.
Second the motion.
Okay, it's seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we will vote. Roll call. Dan, yes. Jeff?
Yes.
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
And Chris?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to appoint David Nixon, temporary town administrator. Or did we already do that?
We already did that. Yeah.
Yep, that one was done.
So now you need wage authorizations for just Christina, or for both? Because we already did the wage too by his contract, didn't we?
Yes.
Yeah, so you're waiving notification of their payment or their wage authorizations. So both Christina and David.
Waiving, okay.
I'll make a motion to waive notification of the wage authorizations for Christina Sutcliffe and David Nixon.
Second the motion.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote. Roll call. Dan, yes. Jeff?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
And Chris?
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. Unanimous. So we've got a couple of minutes. Ryan, we do this? We've got February 1st and February 18th.
Was everyone there?
Everyone was there February 1st.
And maybe no
I'll make a
Pat.
motion to accept the minutes of, what?
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I'll make the motion to accept the minutes of the select board meeting February 1st, 2021.
Second that.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, we'll roll call vote. Dan, yes.
Yes.
Pat,
Yes?
Pat,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
and Chris.
Yes.
Okay, now February 18th. I think maybe Pat and Chris weren't there. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah.
I'll
Yeah,
make the
this is a-
motion.
Mini
Go ahead.
meeting before the executive session.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of the select board meeting February 18th, 2021.
I'll second that.
Seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote. A roll call. Dan, yes. Jeff,
Yes?
Dane,
Stain, Katie,
Yes.
Chris?
Abstain.
3 yeses and 2 abstentions. Okay, committee update. I kind of gave mine already where we're at with the Town Center Committee, which is just in the right-of-way discussion now and waiting for some comments from Mass DOT on the 100% design. And they're currently doing plans and specifications and estimate for this to go out to bid pretty soon. So it's moving along as it should over the last 5 or 6 years. Anyone else have any committee updates they want to say?
I got one. EDC is having their meet and greet for on March 25th. Any questions that any businesses or prospective businesses, town residents would like to ask about possibly opening up a business, whether it's out of your house or out of a storefront in Hubbardston, you can ask questions either with your name or anonymously. You send it to, there's information on Hubbardston Celebration Facebook page. I'm pretty sure the town Facebook page and the website. You can send your questions in via email and they'll be moderated and answered during the meeting. Questions have to be sent in by March 10th, I believe. All the information is on there and it has a lot of detail. But if you have any questions, like, maybe you want to, set up a kitchen out of your house and, a little bakery or an office space or something, and you're not quite sure and you have questions about it, this is your time. If you're ever kicking it around to open up a business, here's your time to ask all your questions. So that's what they're doing. And again, March 25th is the actual Zoom meeting where it will be moderated and all your questions will be answered.
Awesome. Yeah, I saw it on Facebook, so that a few times. So I hope the word gets out and people show up. Okay, anything else for committees, anybody? Nope. Okay, next would be matters not reasonably anticipated by the chair. I don't have any. Does anybody else have anything they want to add? Didn't see any. So we're up to public and press question and answers. Anybody come on for that, Ryan?
I believe so.
All right, well, we're just about at the end of the meeting here, and we're not going to see you for a while. So we're going to miss you. There's no doubt about that. Please be safe as you can. And I know you want to more than anything, but hurry home. It's things you don't like to hear because it makes you cringe a little bit, but we couldn't be prouder. I know I couldn't be prouder. I got my red shirt, my I will wear red, which I will not wear red till you get home because that'd be weird. But my 15-year-old will have it. It's got because it's got a badass army dude on it. So but anyway, we'll see you when you get back. Can't wait till you get back.
Be safe, be well. Safe trip.
Yep.
So thank you. I plan on sending some pictures, which will be fun for social media. keeping in touch with staff, and I've told everyone that the staff will have my personal contact. War has modernized quite a bit, so I will have a lot of internet access and time. So if people want to reach out to me and give me something to do, I'd be happy to help. I've also offered to, as I told the board, help David in any way to make sure that projects are continuing to run, continuing to help with staff or do what needs to get done, because I think that municipal work is as important as any other work. So thank you for the support. A lot of towns say that they support the troops. Very few do. So it means a lot to me and my family personally that you do. And a year will go by quick.
All right. All right. Well, I think we've reached the end of our meeting.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
As we all know, it is not debatable. So we will go to roll call vote, and that'll be Dan, yes. Jeff,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
and Chris.
Yes.
All right. Good night, everybody.